The story begins in outer space, where a group of astronauts is working at a mining station. Suddenly, a massive explosion occurs, forcing all the astronauts to flee in a hurry using escape pods. Hours after the incident, astronaut Troy Hallway is shown inside his own escape pod. When Troy regains consciousness, he finds himself injured and realizes that his companion has died. For a while, he's unable to grasp what exactly happened. He's in shock. Eventually, Troy gathers himself and tries to establish contact with someone. But neither the navigation system nor the radio is functioning. The only thing working is a device strapped to his wrist, which allows him to control limited systems. While Troy is still coping with his injuries, he finally receives a response from a station called Hathor 18. Commander Roberts contacts him and asks what happened. Troy explains that his team was working on an asteroid drilling mission, but the mining station malfunctioned, forcing an emergency evacuation. Now his pod is drifting helplessly through space, with minimal power and non-functional diagnostics. Only the radio, cooling chamber, and life support system are working. Roberts asks him about the rest of his team, and Troy sorrowfully replies that they are all dead. Troy doesn't even know his current coordinates. Thankfully, Roberts manages to detect his bracelet signal, but it will take some time to reach him. On the bright side, Troy isn't critically injured. He then asks Roberts to let him speak with his previous commander, Miller, who led the mission before her. But Roberts firmly states that she is now in command. This leads to an argument between the two, and Roberts warns him that if he wants to survive, he needs to follow her instructions. She instructs Troy to conduct a medical self-examination since all his onboard medical systems are down, and he'll have to examine himself manually. Troy explains that he has suffered a head injury, but reassures her that it's nothing serious. To ensure his mental stability, Roberts begins asking him a series of questions. Troy answers all of them clearly and correctly, confirming that he's mentally alert. He then asks why he hasn't been able to connect with the base, and Roberts explains that there was a malfunction in their system. Because of that, a 4-person team from their side is currently working to fix it. Until then, Troy will have to stay in contact with her directly. She informs him that they've finally located his exact position, but reaching him will take approximately 75 minutes. The bad news, however, is that Troy's pod is rapidly drifting toward the sun. This means they'll have to rescue him as soon as possible. The rest of his pod systems were already failing, and now the cooling system also shuts down. Because of this, the internal temperature begins to drop quickly. If the situation continues, Troy will soon die from hypothermia. Roberts instructs him to manually shut down the cooling system to stabilize the temperature. But Troy is hesitant. He's afraid that if the cooling stops completely, the heat from the sun could burn his body. There's also the danger of intense radiation. So, he suggests that if things get too cold, he'll simply put on his space suit to protect himself. For now, though, his bigger concern is that even if Roberts manages to reach him, how will they rescue him? The pod's airlock and thrusters aren't functioning, which could make the extraction nearly impossible. Roberts explains to Troy that since his capsule is pressurized, once he opens the hatch, the sudden release of pressure will push him directly toward the Hathor 18 station. Their team will be ready to catch him. But Troy is still unsure about this plan. He's lost hope. Roberts calmly tells him that even if there's only a 1% chance of saving him, they will still come for him. Troy then asks her why they're trying so hard to rescue someone like him. He's just an ordinary worker. Roberts avoids the question. He then asks if he can make a call to his home to speak with his wife. Roberts promises they'll try to arrange a call within the hour. She then asks Troy whether the mining company was aware that their equipment was being pushed beyond safe capacity. Troy admits that they were acting on direct orders from the company. They got greedy, and now the crew is paying the price. Soon after, the cold inside the pod increases drastically. Roberts explains that Troy has 2 spacesuits, and each suit can provide an additional 15 minutes of oxygen. Since they're still an hour away, he'll need to survive as long as possible without putting the suit on. Once they're close enough, he can wear it. Troy agrees to follow her advice. But just then, he notices cracks forming on the cabin's window. Roberts warns him that the glass can't handle the extreme contrast between the heat inside and the cold outside. That's why he must shut down the cooling system immediately to stabilize the temperature. Frustrated, Troy yells that he just wants to speak with his wife. But Roberts reminds him that if he doesn't shut down the cooling system now, he'll never get the chance to speak with anyone again. Troy calms himself and begins the process. He moves toward the control panel, but by now, their communication has been cut off. He's completely on his own. As he pulls the lever with force, his glove and fingers freeze and stick to it. The compartment is ice cold. But despite the pain, he manages to shut down the cooling system. When he returns to the cabin, his connection with Roberts is restored. He tells her that when he got up from his seat earlier, he realized he had another injury. A shard of debris had pierced his abdomen. With a rising temperature, he was now bleeding faster, and the pain was growing worse. He needed to seal the wound immediately. Searching his deceased crewmate's pockets, he finds a photograph and a lighter. Using the lighter, Troy cauterizes the wound to stop the bleeding, but the pain is so intense that he loses consciousness. When he comes to again, he reconnects with Roberts, who is clearly distressed and worried about him. She warns him that the temperature will continue rising, so he needs to brace himself. Troy once again asks to speak to her commander, the one who was originally leading their mission, but Roberts refuses. After his persistent pleading, she finally reveals the truth. The commander died during the same incident. She hadn't told him earlier because she didn't want him to panic. Just then, a piece of debris crashes into the capsule, causing it to spin violently. Troy, losing hope, tells Roberts not to bother coming for him. He's not going to make it anyway. Roberts tries to reassure him, saying she will get to him, and begs him not to break communication. But Troy is ready to give up. He crawls toward the hatch and tries to open it, intending to end it all. Before he can, another piece of debris hits the capsule. This time, it stabilizes the spin. Troy regains consciousness and asks Roberts what he needs to do to stay alive. She tells him that for the next 10 minutes, the heat will intensify even more. He'll need to endure it. Then he can put on his evacuation suit, which will provide 15 minutes of oxygen. That's all the time they'll need to reach him. Troy says he just wants to speak to his wife. He wants to say sorry. They had a son. But before Troy could say anything more, another piece of debris struck the capsule, puncturing a hole in the side and causing the internal pressure to drop rapidly. Acting fast, Troy puts on a suit. Moments later, the emergency lights come on and Roberts reestablishes contact. She tells him that while his life support battery is at 95%, his oxygen levels are down to just 18%. Realizing the urgency, Troy decides to go outside and seal the breach himself so the cabin's pressure can stabilize. But he also knows that stepping outside now, so close to the sun, means certain death within minutes due to the extreme heat and radiation. Still, he insists Roberts should turn around and not risk her crew's life for him. But Roberts refuses. She says she's under direct orders to rescue him. If even one crew member survives, the corporation won't be completely shut down. If Troy lives, there will be investigations, maybe for years, but the company will survive. Hearing this, Troy feels crushed, realizing the company is only saving him to protect its own interests. But Roberts tells him that even if she hadn't been ordered, she still would have come for him. Touched, Troy thanks her. He says, "I'm going to die from radiation anyway, so you should turn back." But Roberts won't give up. Troy begins talking about his son. When his son was 6 years old, Troy got the opportunity to go into space. Back then, he chose his career over his family. And now, standing on the edge of death, he regrets that decision more than anything. He wants to apologize to his wife and son before it's too late. Roberts tells him that she once had a 7-year-old daughter who died. Her husband couldn't handle the pain and left her. For years, all she ever wanted was for someone to tell her that they loved her. Hearing this makes Troy emotional, and he cuts off communication with Roberts. He quietly begins to accept his death. But then, he remembers that his crewmate's suit had new prototype gloves. He quickly grabs them and puts them on, then asks Roberts how to fix the hole. Roberts tells him that he'll have very little time to do it. As soon as the cabin rotates to the right angle, he must seal the hole immediately so his body doesn't burn from radiation. Troy gathers his strength and goes outside to fix the hole. After a short time, he successfully seals it. But now his oxygen level has dropped to just 3%, and Roberts tells him to get back inside quickly. Troy is nearly unconscious from the low oxygen, but he uses all his strength to get back inside and activate the emergency oxygen tank. By now, the capsule is even closer to the sun, and sunlight begins to burn his face. That's when Roberts tells him to eject from the capsule immediately. She can see him now. Troy tells her to go back, that he won't survive. Roberts shouts that she's not giving up, and they're almost there. Suddenly, Troy remembers his son and says, "I won't give up." At that very moment, a call from his wife connects, and hearing her voice fills Troy with new hope. He tells Roberts, "I'm coming." We see Roberts' station come in front of Troy's capsule. Just then, the window of the capsule breaks, and Troy feels himself being pulled out into space. That's where the story ends.